Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Late Night Learning. I am your host, Dr. Anthony Palomba. Now today we're going to be talking about self-perception and the video game player himself or herself. When we think about video game players, we kind of think of them in kind of a generic sense. That's a video game player playing that game. That might be a video game player playing that game. So video game player as a term really doesn't really tell us much of anything but for somebody's playing a video game. But a lot is going on between the gamer and the game itself. In this lecture, we're going to be talking about egos, we're going to be talking about personalities, we're going to be talking about connections between the player and the machine itself. When we think about playing video games, we plug in and turn on the video game console or handheld device and pick up the controller and play. We don't really deconstruct what's going on as we're playing the video game. Instead, we're more interested in collecting points, collecting coins, and making sure that we've beaten the level. But there's a lot that goes on at a very subconscious level. A lot of latent mechanisms that are at play that ensure that you're having the connection that you're seeking out to the video game playing experience. So without further ado, let's get started. So the ego. When we play video games, our ego is vulnerable. Our ego is left open. We are attaching our ego to the game playing experience itself. We decide to play the video game, and therefore we decide to satiate some interest from our ego. So we have the id, we have the superego. We have the id and the superego. The id concerns our primal, uncontested, even uncoordinated interests, our wants, our desires, our greed, perhaps our lust for sex. Our superego is more of the organized realm of our mind. What we can do in society, right? Kind of what is allowable, what is passable. And then our ego balances between the id and superego to ensure that we are balanced as we move through our own lives. And so from this, there is something called the pleasure principle. We're interested in accruing pleasure, first and foremost. We are interested in accruing pleasure. Reality principle states that this is filtered out through our own reality, the way that we gain pleasure, the way that we satiate our ego and its needs by balancing the id and superego is a very intricate system that requires us to be plugged into not only our own needs, but what we can do in reality, what we're able to realize in reality, what society allows us to do. Now with video games, if we take a step back and we think about Grand Theft Auto, we think of Call of Duty, we think of Halo, we're able to embark on quite a number of actions society won't let us do. Society will not let you put on a hockey mask and go chase teenagers around a lake. Won't let you do it. You'll be on the FBI's most wanted list. You'll be imprisoned. Video games allow us to do actions that eclipse or transcend society's barriers. We're able to exercise more fantasies, more desires through video gameplay. That's what we're able to exercise. We're able to exercise what we desire, what we want, what we crave, unfettered, and without any societal barriers or laws or limitations or statutes. We're able to run over people in video games, kill people in video games, defeat people in video games, conquer people in video games. Our ego can be satiated in ways that society will not let us. And so when we think about our ego, there's a lot to be said for video gameplay. We're able to satiate needs that society often will not let us satiate, or satiate in the manner that we desire. So video gameplay, really from the way that it connects with people, serves as a window, serves as a road, serves as a connection between our desires that we may keep clandestine, that we may keep hidden from other people, but we can enact during video gameplay. Let's keep going. Body image. Video gameplay often requires you to move, to manipulate, to exploit, to harness, to push, to lead an avatar. Typically, not all the time, but typically, that avatar is a human or some sort of humanoid or even an alien that might have 2 legs and 2 arms and a head, right? Even if we're not playing as a human, we still have an avatar that very well may be constructed to look like a human, may be anatomically similar to what a human looks like. And so body image inherently manifests during video gameplay. We have certain ideals of what beauty is. We know that there are African tribes that might celebrate a thicker or more curvaceous woman. We know that those same ideals of beauty for women might be different in Western societies, where we value a thinner woman. Neither portrait of beauty is right or wrong, but it is important to address that certain cultures have certain perceptions of what it means to be beautiful. And studies have demonstrated that this is in part taught, that what we perceive to be beautiful is informed and maintained by the society that we grow up in, by the society we are raised in, by the society we are birthed into. And so we see this appear in video games all the time when we're looking at particular female avatars that may have certain curves or proportions that seemingly are unrealistic but may be desirable based on the kinds of advertisements and based on the kinds of images of female models and porn stars and everything else that we've all been exposed to here in the United States. So this informs the way avatars may look. If we look at male avatars, for instance, male avatars are often so strong they cannot fit into a shirt. They are usually ripping through a shirt. It's probably another unrealistic depiction of what it is to be a male, be it in Japan, be it in America, or wherever else the video game has been produced. But nevertheless, we have these extreme body types that are interspersed across a constellation of video games and is widely accepted. Do these avatars really represent us? Probably not. So what do they represent? Why is it that if I play Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, I can play as a super curvaceous, sexualized, hypersexualized female avatar, or I can play as the hypermasculine fighter? What am I getting out of this? Why do I like this? Does it allow me to escape? Does it allow me to fantasize about being some sort of extreme person? Do I feel worse about myself because I'm not like them? Or do I feel better about myself because I'm not like them? These extreme body types that we see in Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter and in Tekken and in a lot of different fighting games, for instance, illustrate some sort of deep-seated need to be able to connect to different body types that are not our own. That we're able to be transported into something admirable or aspirational or something we wish we were like. I wish I had bigger biceps. I wish I had better abs, whatever it may be. If I play as this character, I can be that person. If we break down language in video gameplay, when two teenagers are picking avatars, they'll say, oh, I'm him, I'm her. When we make those connections, there's very little distance between who we are as a person in reality and who we are in the video game. The minimal distance between I'm her, I'm him, and who we are really does illustrate how quickly we might agglomerate onto, or we might affix ourselves to a particular character and adopt that identity readily. There's a lot of switching also in video gameplay when we think about avatars, the customization aspect. We cannot customize ourselves in reality. I can't give myself bigger biceps without pouring hours and hours at the gym. Many of us are not willing to go through that pain. But a video game allows us to fulfill fantasies quickly and seamlessly. We're able to kind of embark or engage in some sort of body dysmorphia, if you will, or some sort of body mutilation or body manipulation by switching out a bust size on a female avatar, or switching out arm size, or a different kind of beard for the male, whatever it may be. That's unrealistic. We can't really do that in life. If somebody's going to go under the knife to gain bigger breasts or a bigger butt or better abs or chest implants or pec implants or a different nose or different lips or whatever it may be, that takes a while. It takes a lot of money. And it takes a lot of commitment. Video games help us transcend all of that. In a mere matter of seconds, we can be a curvaceous female, we can be a strong, tough female, we can be a hypersexualized male, or we can be a strong male, or whatever it may be within seconds. And we can shift from avatar to avatar. That's a very, very unique way in being able to shed identities when we play video games. No other medium really allows us to do this. Let's keep going. Big personality. So additionally, aside from our own body images, aside from satiating our ego and trying to keep our id and superego balanced, especially among reality, especially among people in society, there's only so much that we can do without sticking out like a sore thumb or breaking laws. Big personality gets involved with the kinds of personality traits that we declare that we have. So a battery of questions is often asked with this particular personality scale to figure out who you are or what you are. Now, as you can imagine, this is rife with issues because our own perceptions of ourselves are usually flawed at best, or at least for that matter. And so openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism are some of the personality traits that humans tend to have. Do they vacillate? Do they vary? Does it change day by day? Sure. Now, we do have, though, some sort of fixed variation. And that's important to realize as well. We do have some sort of fixed variation in our personalities. One day you may be super agreeable, the next day you may be less agreeable, but generally speaking, you're pretty agreeable. So sure, that could vacillate, that could vary day to day, fine. Personalities also open us up to different genres. They open us up to playing and using different types of mediums. And so here, if we have, for instance, neuroticism opens us up to engaging in violence or engaging into comedy. Openness, having an open personality, opens us up to a lot of different experiences. Some we may not have anticipated. We also have conscientiousness, being responsible, being on top of things, checking off that checklist. Oh, let me tell you something. If you don't make checklists in life, you're missing out. Nothing feels better than crossing something off your list. I can attest to that. Extroversion. Are you loud and open? Do you like people? Are you a people person? Do you express yourself well? Or are you introverted? There's nothing wrong with being introverted. You might have a lesser inclination to be extroverted. What about agreeableness? Are you agreeable? Do you easily get upset? What ticks you off? What upsets you? So when we think about all of these personalities, they really do help inform the way in which we go about our business, the way in which we partake in activities, the way in which we decide what medium to play. And so when we think about brand big personalities, the big five, we're thinking about using these personalities to help us better predict video gameplay behavior for the purposes of this class. Has this been done before with television and film? Yeah, there are actually connections and linkages. And so our personalities absolutely are an antecedent to helping us determine what kinds of video games we play and what kinds of video gameplay experiences we gravitate toward. Let's keep going. Personality continued. So here, we have something called trait theory. I've actually used this in a recent study in which I looked at personality traits of consumers and how they predicted movie genre consumption and movie platform consumption as well. And so trait theory really helped me explicate why personality served as an excellent predictor for genre and for platform with varying levels of success. Additionally, we have the Brand Asset Valuator. Brand Asset Valuator is put out annually. And what it does is it evaluates brands and it evaluates personality traits behind these brands. If we look at innocent brands, we're looking at PBS and Disney. If we look at heroic brands, it could very well be Saving Private Ryan, which was a movie about 20 years ago, or the Star Wars franchise. Mad Men viewers have been found to be emotionally sensitive and intellectually curious. Family Guy viewers are rebels. And so here you can quickly see that personalities can really serve as the linchpin for engendering and producing really strong consumer profiles. Being able to say that we believe that within a group there's a lot of similar traits going on among these consumers, and once we've grouped them effectively, we can start using them to predict other consumer behavior. And this can be done with video games as well. Let's keep going. Self-concept. Self-concept versus self-esteem. So in video gameplay, we may perceive ourselves to be a badass. We may perceive ourselves to be a treasure hunter. We may perceive ourselves to be a killer. And all of this is tied to our self-esteem. We pump ourselves up all the time when we play video games. We feel good. It helps us reinforce notions that we already had about ourselves. I'm awesome. I can rock this. I can beat this. I can find this. I can kill that. Our self-esteem is very much tied to our own self-concept, who we perceive ourselves to be, up against who we want to be. And so this is encouraged with successful completion of levels, collection of rewards, points, prizes, or other sources of notoriety. These are elements of self-determination theory. Self-determination theory, and we've gone over this, deals with being competent at a video game, for instance, or being competent at a task, autonomy, being the only person to make that decision, being the only person to make the decision to play the video game or to take on a mission, and then self-connection or relatedness, being able to share these experiences with others. When we're competent, when we're autonomous, and when we share our experiences with others, it's a path toward psychological well-being, internal well-being. This theory is used constantly to test certain phenomenon in video gameplay. We also have this idea of actual self versus ideal self. I'm actually not as good as I think I am at Red Dead Redemption. I'm actually not as good as I think I am at Fortnite. I'm not as good as I think I am with League of Legends. I'm not as good as I think I am. That's my actual self. Ideally, I am that big fish in a small pond. I'm crushing it in my neighborhood. I'm top ranked. Ideally, I'm the best. There's conceptual distance there between actual self and between ideal self. And what every video game player has to ask themselves is, how big is the distance? And what am I willing to do to transcend it, to shorten it, to get it down to where I am who I want to be? Where do I go? How do I do this? We think about this all the time. And we know that the bigger risks often involve sacrificing or making vulnerable our own levels of self-esteem. To get better, we have to endure a lot of failure. To get better, we have to endure a lot of failure. So when we think about self-esteem, we also may think about social comparison. Consumers compare themselves to video game players, but we may also compare ourselves to avatars, which might sound strange at first, but a lot of people do this. I wish I was as good looking as Ryu. I wish I was as, competent as Cloud in Final Fantasy, or competent as Master Chief in Halo, or competent as Tifa in Final Fantasy VII, or as competent as the hero in Uncharted. We compare ourselves not only just to video game players we do battle with, but we also compare ourselves to avatars. Avatars are idealistic, extreme versions of people we may aspire to be or want to be. Video gameplay shortens the distance between actual self and ideal self, doesn't it? If I want to be a big, burly Russian, I'm thinking of Zagar from Street Fighter, or Zangief. Zangief is his name. If I want to be a big, burly, strong, hairy Russian, I can be him instantly. If that's a fantasy of mine, if that's a goal of mine. So video gameplay shortens this. And especially with virtual reality, equipped gaming, we really do step into the shoes, suits, bodies of avatars and fully take on their own image. Is this dangerous? For some, maybe. But it does allow us to live out fantasies in a cheap and express manner. Let's keep going. Management of ourselves and others. We have to manage ourselves as people. And we have multiple selves. Some of you might speak differently when you're in a different neighborhood. Some of you may act differently around your friends versus your family. We have multiple iterations of ourselves that we're constantly switching on and switching off. We may even have a torn self. Those of you who are Dominican, those of you who are Puerto Rican, those of you who are Italian or African or German or Chinese or Korean or Japanese or whatever it may be, you may be torn because you may be a student here in the United States. You're not quite American, but then again, because you've been here for a few years or maybe 5 years, you're also not quite Japanese anymore. You're not quite Chinese anymore, or you're not quite Middle Eastern anymore. Sometimes we have torn identities if we're kind of split between two different cultures. We also have an extended self. So on top of trying to manage our multiple selves that we might have, the way we act around grandma and grandpa, the way that we act around friends, we have extended selves through the brands that we use, through the brands that we wear, through the brands that we consume. I'm wearing, right now, a bunch of stuff from Express. Do I see myself in a certain light? Yeah, I do. I think I'm a good dresser. I like to look well. I like well-made clothing. I like to make a good impression, especially regarding the way that I dress. Okay. So all of those things can be construed from that. What about school brands? Did you go to Syracuse University, University of Florida? Did you go to NYU? Did you go to Fordham? Did you go to a big sports school? UNC Chapel Hill, University of Miami, University of Michigan? What about Ohio State? What about the Ivies? Did you go to Harvard? Did you go to Yale? Are these brands? Yeah, you bet they are. School brands are brands nonetheless. And we gravitate towards certain universities because we hope to have some sort of halo effect that occurs. That if I'm a product of a really sexy brand, of a really prestigious brand, it'll rub off on me and it'll say something about me. And so we align ourselves with brands all the time to manipulate, to manage, to change the way people perceive us. It's the difference in wearing something from, Victoria's Secret versus Ann Taylor, or drinking Starbucks instead of that disgusting Dunkin' Donuts. I'm just teasing, I drink Dunkin' Donuts myself. But we have brands that when we use them, they articulate something about us. We think about the individual self, the family self, the community self, and the group self. We think about all of these layers of identities that we walk around with and compile together. It's no wonder that no two people are exactly alike. Between the brands that we use and the way that we act around other people, we're all particularly unique, and we have opportunities to make ourselves unique. This is not lost on video gameplay. Do you judge other people based on the types of video games they play? For some of you, I know you're laughing at this. You're laughing because you can't believe people do it, and then some of you are laughing because you do it. We judge people based on the kind of shooter video games they're playing, the levels they're at, the badges they have, the consoles they own. Oh, you have the older Xbox One, I have the slim version. You have this, I have that. Social comparison is going on all the time during video game play and video game consumption. Let's keep going. So what do we get? What do we get from video game play? Well, according to one study, there are a bunch of things that we get. For one, competition. We have a lot of use for video game play because we get competition. We're able to compete against each other. Video game play also serves as a diversion. We're able to be distracted from other things that are bothering us. We also get a sense of enjoyment, just basic enjoyment, fun from beating monsters and beating levels and beating worlds and collecting flags and collecting trophies. We also enjoy being in a fantasy world. Again, that helps us to escape and to even reflect upon our own lives. There's also a social aspect here. We're able to share these experiences with people and even play with people. And that goes into interaction. We're able to interact with a world where there's minimal risk. Even if our avatar dies or we have to start over, we're still okay. So video gameplay allows us to take on a lot of risk without really suffering any kind of consequence from that risk. There's also sports interest and knowledge. Sometimes we gain knowledge and interest from playing sports video games, or really from playing other video games for that matter. We gain interest and we gain knowledge. And there's also team identification. We enjoy identifying with a tribe, with a team, with a group, with a collective. We gain some sort of satisfaction from that. So across all of these avenues, when we're thinking about why we play video games and the connection between the self and the connection between video gameplay and how the self and video gameplay come together, it's important to recognize that there's a lot going on here. Well, that's all the time we have on Late Night Learning. As always, keep laughing and keep learning.